Okay, everybody, we are on page 47, and we are talking today about statistics and statistical questions, which is the start of our chapter 9. So, a statistical question, well, let's start with statistics is the science of organizing, analyzing, and displaying data. And data is a word that can seem a little bit foreign or strange, but data just really means information. So anytime we're collecting information from people and then organizing it, analyzing it, displaying it, we are participating in statistics. So then that follows that a statistical question is a question that would give us data that needed to be organized. We'll say organized and analyzed because you can display anything. All right, so what does that mean? So the question, Miss Funk, what is your middle name? There is only one answer to that. Anne is my middle name. So that is not a statistical question because there is not data that can be organized or analyzed. It's just one answer. However, if I ask a bunch of people, what's your middle name? That would be a statistical question because I'm going to get a bunch of different responses. So one of the things we look for in a statistical question is this is a question that we expect variety, so different answers. So how many times does your heart beat in a minute? That's a statistical question. How old were you when you went on your first plane ride? That's a statistical question. How many miles do you live from school? That's a statistical question. We expect that different people will have different answers. Something that is just like a hard, cold fact, like what temperature does water freeze at? That is not a statistical question. There is one answer because that's the only temperature. So a statistical question is a question that we can use statistics on. And we're going to start with knowing that it's displaying data. We're going to start looking at some ways that we display data. And one of those ways is a line plot. And I just said line plot, and I always do this. It's dot plot. You do it on a line, so that's probably why I always think that. Dot plot, but we're going to make one really quick. So first thing to do when you make a dot plot is you need to make a number line. And we're going to use a data set. If we did numbers of books that people have read. So here's our data set. And the data set is just the numbers that you're given as the answer to the question. So if the question is about how many books people have read, the data set would be the answers you get. So somebody says 15, somebody else says 4, somebody says 8, somebody says 3, somebody says 10, 9, 8, 3, 4, 5, 8. All right, so on my number line, I need to make sure that all of these numbers, anything that's in that box needs to be included on the number line. So I'm going to say, if I have 15 lines, I'll be okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Even better, I can start with 0. Okay, and then I have to number the number line, obviously. Okay, now I place a dot above the number for each value. So here's what that means. I say, okay, 15, and I like to be really organized and check these off as I go. So 15, so I'm gonna cross it off and put a dot above 15, so I don't actually do that one twice. 4, 8, 3, 10, 9, 8. And when you have more than one dot on a number, you stack it above. Three, another 3, 4, 4, 5, and 8. All right, so this is a dot plot. Oop, don't forget your units. So this would be books read. And we can put that below or above, it doesn't matter. Okay, so there's our dot plot. And now the nice thing about this is we can easily see what are the areas kind of where data is gathered up and what are the areas that are oddballs. So one thing we can look for in data is a cluster. And a cluster is just what it sounds like when things are clumped together. So there is a cluster between 3 and 5, and there is a cluster between 8 and 10. Okay, because cluster means clumped together. We also look for peaks. So a peak is just what it sounds like. It's the highest point. And sometimes we might have 2 really high points. Like, let's say one more person had said they read 4 books. We would just say we had 2 peaks. But in this case, we only have 1 peak, and that is 8. So 8 is our peak. And then we also have, what's the other word? We can have a gap. So we do have a little bit of gap between 6 and 7. So for whatever reason, just nobody, but it's only a gap if it's empty space between values. So 0 is not a gap because there's nothing on the other side of 0. So it's kind of like it's a valley. It has to be between 2 things. So right here, this would be a gap. And hopefully you paid attention to the color coding so you know what each thing means. Now we'll come back to this later, but there's one more thing I want you to know. This guy right over here is called an outlier. An outlier is a data value that's way outside of what everybody else is. So where everybody else is kind of in here, he's way out on his own and by himself or herself. So we use the word outlier to mean something that lies outside of where the rest of the data values are. So that is video 1.